As the people of Tucson, it is our collective responsibility to establish and maintain healthy relationships in our community. Pillars and Bridges is a group of caring community members that are committed to creating positive social change. We envision Tucson as a thriving city that celebrates diversity, exemplifies leadership, and works cooperatively to ensure the safety and well-being of all its community members.
Grassroots organizations are absolutely critical in the work that we're doing to try and improve the justice system. It has been, I think, long viewed that the community was on one end of a spectrum of all these various interventions, but in reality, grassroots should be there in the middle. When we started doing this work, it was very clear that there was two camps, the community who had expectations about what the justice system needed to be doing to make the community feel safe, and these long-held beliefs and cultures that were often established by individuals decades ago. Our justice system is largely built around individuals who were designing the justice system based off of what they would or wouldn't be invested in. And now we know it's a completely different world, and the community has a very different perspective. And it's only by these grassroots organizations that we're able to connect with what does community safety mean. And it's not a monolith. Different areas of Tucson, different areas of Pima County have very different perspectives about what it means to feel safe. And we need to be listening to those unique individual communities and those organizations that have trust with communities to be able to redesign the work that we are doing to better meet each individual community's needs. So the county joined the Safety and Justice Challenge. We were one of the first 10 implementation sites across the country, and we actually have some folks joining us today, Lori and Kevin in the back of the room here. They traveled here to be tonight. They're with a contractor to the MacArthur Foundation and representing the foundation's work. And they have invested so much in Tucson and Pima County. If you're not investing in innovation, if you're not investing in good data-driven decision-making, and you're not investing trust with the community, the work can only go so far. And thanks to the foundation, thanks to the strategies that we've implemented here, that even when our grant funding ends in a couple of years, I'm 100% confident about the long-term trajectory of this work.
Let me take a moment to just emphasize the fact that it's the community members that are the hot shots in here, okay? That are the voices that we need to hear from. Because it's the community members that are able to share those boots on the ground, right? That heart, that connection to the community that's able to bubble that up to those community leaders and public officials so we can continue to work together and get things done.
The reason this meeting is so important and why we're coming together as community and also community organizations and government is because we've tried to create policy and create solutions in a vacuum. More often than not, you have the individuals in positions of authority who get together with other people in authority, identify information, and decide these are the solutions we are going to legislate and push upon those constituents in our community. But it hasn't worked. The war on drugs, other policies, other things has not worked. It's made the issues worse. What we need to do and what we need to understand from evidence-based practices is everything has to be community-driven and community-focused. If we don't have the community at the table to be able to sit across from the table from those in authority, from those government officials, from those elected officials and say, hey, look, yes, you made this policy, but this is what that policy looks like in my community. This is what it looks like with our children. This is what it looks like with my neighbor and how it's affecting us. If you don't have the community at the table to share what the boots on the ground look like and how it's directly affecting them, we're not going to make sure that we can implement the change, the type of trust and the community safety that needs to be done to accomplish what we're trying to accomplish.
Chad Casmore, your chief of police, third generation Tucsonan, raising fourth, and I've worked in every geographic location of this city, so I know a thing or two about our community. Why is it important for any chief of police in today's day and age in policing in a post-George Floyd world or a world where major city chiefs have a lifespan of 2.5 to 3 years? It's as simple as trust and connection. You need to have access to the community. You need to have access to system partners. You need to have access to stakeholders. And you need to understand and meet them where they're at to have dialogue. We overcomplicate this conversation across the country, or when we're talking about social justice reform. What we're talking about is human connection and understanding and through an empathetic lens of what somebody else's experiences or life experiences are, and not casting judgment like we heard tonight with the community. Lived experiences and building co-response models where folks understand what it's like versus just judging someone or holding someone accountable from, let's say, a policing perspective. If somebody committed a crime and we take someone to jail, expecting that person to be different without some type of investment is silly. And so it's really what we've heard tonight is something that I have the benefit as a chief of the Tucson Police Department to be out in the community on a really frequent level, because you just don't represent, you don't speak for everyone in Tucson, right? We're the 33rd largest city in the country. We're a border city. We have twice the poverty of the rest of the country. When we talked about fentanyl tonight, what I stated was 50% of the fentanyl in this country is seized in our state, an hour south of us. So lots of responsibility, not for me as a chief of police, just having dialogue in my community, but at a local level, at a state level, and a national level. Let me start with, this police department doesn't believe that you can arrest your way out of what we're talking about today, okay? The complexities that fentanyl has created for our community is different than anything we've ever seen. I spent about 4 years of my career focused just on narcotics and violent crime, and I can tell you the way that this drug has impacted our town, our community, our state, and our country is like nothing we've ever seen. And at a time in our world where we spend a lot of time at a local, state, and federal level talking at each other, this crisis might be the one thing that draws us, both parties, to actually have to work together to solve this problem.
We're working with individuals that are transitioning back into the community. So we have a few different phases we're working. The first phase is for pre-trial services, individuals pre-booking. So individuals that may be detained and pulled in, they will, if they're a lower level misdemeanor and not necessarily a danger to themselves or others, they'll go through the pre-trial services modular, and if they qualify, then they'll be reduced on their own recognizance into the community, given a court date to return back. And what our job is as individuals with lived experience is to not necessarily have any authority over the individual, but come alongside that individual, meet them where they're at, say, hey, look, we understand there's some barriers to your success, whether that be substance abuse issues, mental health issues, unsheltered or homeless issues, employment issues, whatever the barrier may be. Our job is to come alongside them and to identify those barriers and offer solutions and give them resources and connect them with resources to remove those barriers. And one of the main things we really want to focus on at the Transition Center is humanizing and looking at the human connection of people. Because in our system today, we forget that we're dealing with people. We want to put labels, we want to have stigmatizing language, we want to say those felons, those cons, those this, those that. We want to give them, when we go and we apply for jobs, when we go for housing, we've got these different applications, check this box, check that box. And all this continues to perpetuate the issues of being someone who made a mistake. And we shouldn't have to pay for that mistake. Even after we do our time, we pay our debts to society, we pay our fines, we do whatever punishment that was assigned to us, we shouldn't have to, after that, continue to pay our debt every day of our life afterwards.
I'm not a big fan of the word reform because I've been the focus of it the last decade of my career. And it doesn't capture the complexities or the nuances of public safety work. I never say law enforcement because enforcing the laws is actually a pretty small part of what we actually do for a living. And so when we think about it, my only suggestion to us as a community that has the opportunity to think about our systems and the evolution of those systems is it's complex. I get to be the face of it as the chief, but I assure you, it's so complex. It's so complex. It boils down to recognizing at a foundation, our community has twice the poverty rate of the rest of the country. And we all know, everybody in here, no matter what, if you're a community leader, you're part of the larger conversation, you're a stakeholder in this room, in this conversation, you recognize until we really talk about poverty and we talk about our educational systems, we talk about the investment, what happens when somebody does go into the Pima County Jail?
21 years, 9 months, 7 days, 3 hours, and 17 seconds, right? The reason I know that because I know my DLC number, 174063. It's ingrained in my brain. I came home and I couldn't get a job. I didn't know how to write a resume, and I'll show you the strange part. I've never used a drug in my life, yet I still went to prison. Back to back. So I came home and I didn't know what a resource was because I don't know who to reach out to get a resource. There was no county to meet me when I got released. I was given a parole officer. At parole, I met some other like-minded people like me, Desiree, and I was like, you're doing what? So I used to go to the jail and give out food just because I've done so much wrong in my life. At some point, I got to do something good. So I started out doing good and I started meeting people, right? Which brought me to this room. Because if I didn't get released, I would have never been in this room with community leaders. Now, we need to bridge like the gap. We're talking about like a bridge and a gap. When you have one part of a bridge, you have the other part of the bridge. One person just can't walk to the other side. Unfortunately, when you've been in prison, you need to be met halfway, right? If you're not met halfway, you won't know how to get to the other side of the bridge because most people who've been in prison have some type of trauma issue, whether it's substance, whether it's mental, whether it's the neighborhood they grew in, whether it was racial disparity. So we have to have a dialogue and action.
I feel privileged to be able to come to these events and represent the neighborhoods that we all are living in. And hopefully we can keep doing these events and bring more of the youth into these events because they are going to lead the world when we leave this earth. They're going to be the ones that have to understand what's going on. We got to stop telling them what to do and listen to what they want to do. And if we do not do that, they're going to look at us as not being very smart. By getting in this togetherness with each other, we get to understand what the police are thinking, the courts are thinking, the parole officers are thinking, and other community services are thinking.
When you think about justice reform, 9 times out of 10, people are gonna turn and look at the chief. They're gonna turn and look at everyone in uniform. But justice reform is actually every interaction that a community member has at every step, from the initial interaction with a police officer, through the court system, through parole and probation, as well as reentry. So when we see justice system come up as a common theme, that pretty much lets us know that we got a lot of work to do, people. We got a lot of work to do. So think about justice system reform and always think about public trust.